The young woman's name was Emily Carter. She clutched her mop tightly as if it could shield her. Her voice was soft, almost trembling. "I'm sorry," she repeated. I didn't mean to fall asleep. I've been working double shifts. Please, sir, don't tell anyone." Daniel stepped closer, his tone gentle. "Emily, isn't it? You work here every night." She nodded quickly, avoiding his gaze. "Yes. I start after midnight and usually finish by morning." Daniel studied her. Her hands were rough from hard labor, her shoes worn to the sole. He could see she wasn't just tired, she was drowning in exhaustion. "You shouldn't be sleeping here," he said softly. "It's not safe." Her lips quivered. "I don't have anywhere else to rest. I can't afford rent right now, so I sleep wherever I can." The words hit Daniel like a blow. He had spent his life surrounded by luxury, yet here stood a woman who didn't even have a bed to call her own. For the first time in years, something stirred in him, compassion. Maybe even something more. Emily quickly looked away, ashamed. "I know someone like me doesn't belong in a place like this. I'll be more careful." Daniel wanted to say more, but his phone buzzed, breaking the moment. His assistant's urgent call pulled him back to his world of power and meetings. He turned to leave but paused at the doorway. His voice was quiet, almost hesitant. "Take care of yourself, Emily." Emily blinked in surprise, watching him disappear down the hall. No one had ever spoken her name with such warmth before. That night, as Daniel lay in his penthouse apartment, he couldn't sleep. He kept seeing her tired eyes, her trembling hands, her whispered apology. Something about Emily Carter refused to leave his mind. The following evening, the skyscraper of Harrison Enterprises glowed once again against the city skyline. For most people, it was just another building. For Emily Carter, it was survival. With her cleaning cart in front of her, she pushed through the lobby, shoulders aching from the weight of the day. She had already worked a shift at the diner that morning, serving coffee to customers who barely noticed her existence. Her feet were sore, her back hurt, but she couldn't stop. Rent, bills, her mother's medicine, and her younger brother's school fees, all of it rested on her fragile shoulders. Emily sighed, gripping the mop handle tightly. "Just one more night, Emily. You can do this," she whispered to herself. As she reached for her supplies, her breath caught. Someone was standing in the hallway, waiting. It was Daniel Harrison, the CEO himself, dressed not in his usual expensive suit, but in a simple black coat. Emily froze, panic rising. "Yes, sir. Did I do something wrong yesterday? Please, I didn't mean to." Daniel shook his head gently, a small smile tugging at his lips. "No, Emily. You didn't do anything wrong. I thought maybe you could use this." He handed her a small paper bag. Confused, Emily hesitated before slowly taking it. The warmth seeped through the thin paper, and when she peeked inside, her eyes widened. Soup. Fresh bread. A small container of salad. Her voice trembled. You bought this? For me." Daniel nodded. "I noticed you don't get much of a break. Nobody should work all night on an empty stomach." For a moment, Emily didn't know how to respond. No one in her life had shown her kindness in a long time. She bit her lip, blinking back unexpected tears. Why would you do this for me? I'm just a janitor." Daniel's voice softened. "Because you're a human being. And I think you deserve better than what life has given you." Emily's throat tightened. She wanted to argue, to tell him he didn't understand her struggles, but the warmth of the food in her hands silenced her. Slowly, she sat down on the marble steps, unwrapping the bread. Daniel stayed nearby, leaning casually against the wall, watching her with a strange calmness he hadn't felt in years. Emily ate quietly, her eyes flickering toward him now and then. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel invisible. When she finished, she whispered, "Thank you. Daniel, right?" He smiled faintly. "Yes, Daniel." Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. A fragile thread of connection, delicate yet undeniable. Emily's lips curved into the faintest smile. It wasn't much, but it was real. And for Daniel, that small smile lit up the emptiness he had been carrying for years. But the fragile peace didn't last. A loud, commanding voice echoed through the hallway. "Emily Carter, what do you think you're doing?" Emily's body stiffened, her face paling instantly. The paper bag slipped from her trembling hands. Daniel turned sharply, his expression hardening. A tall, heavy-set man in a gray suit stormed toward them, Mr. Grant, the head supervisor of janitorial staff. His eyes were filled with disdain as they landed on Emily. Daniel straightened, his protective instincts flaring. And Emily's heart sank, knowing trouble had just found her. Emily's heart thudded in her chest as Mr. Grant, her supervisor, marched toward her. His heavy footsteps echoed like thunder in the empty corridor. His sharp eyes darted between Emily and the paper bag of food lying at her feet, then flicked to Daniel, though he didn't yet realize who he was addressing. "Emily Carter," he barked, his voice filled with disdain. "Do you think this is a picnic area? Eating during work hours? Sleeping yesterday, and now this? Are you trying to get yourself fired?" Emily's hands shook as she scrambled to pick up the bag. "Mr. Grant, I wasn't slacking. But before she could finish, Daniel's calm but firm voice cut through the tension. "I gave her that food." The words hung heavy in the air. Mr. Grant blinked, confusion flashing across his face as he finally recognized the man before him. His posture stiffened immediately. "Mr. Harrison, I didn't realize you were." Daniel straightened to his full height, his expression unreadable but his eyes sharp. "Emily works harder than anyone here. Do not mistake exhaustion for laziness. And don't you ever speak to her like that again." The silence that followed was suffocating. Emily's breath caught in her throat. No one had ever defended her before, certainly not against Mr. Grant, who took pleasure in belittling the cleaning staff whenever he could. Mr. Grant swallowed hard, his earlier authority dissolving into nervousness. "Of course, sir. I meant no disrespect. It won't happen again." He gave Emily a final glare before retreating down the hall, his shoulders stiff with suppressed anger. As his footsteps faded, Emily stood frozen, torn between relief and fear. Her voice came out shaky, almost a whisper. Why did you defend me like that? People like you don't care about people like me." Daniel's eyes softened as he looked at her, his voice steady but warm. "Maybe you're wrong about people like me." Emily's chest tightened. She didn't know what to say, so she looked down at her trembling hands. All her life, people in power had only looked past her, or down on her. And yet, here was a man who saw her, who spoke to her with respect, even gentleness. Her heart whispered something dangerous. Don't fall for this. Men like him don't stay. He's from a different world. Daniel, too, felt the weight of unspoken emotions. He hadn't planned on interfering. He hadn't planned on caring. But something about Emily stirred something long buried inside him. After a long pause, Daniel stepped closer. "Emily, if anyone treats you unfairly again, you come straight to me. Understand?" Her eyes flickered with fear and confusion. I don't want trouble, sir. It's better if I just stay invisible." Daniel shook his head slowly. No one should have to live invisible. The words pierced Emily's heart. She wanted to believe him, but belief was a dangerous thing. Before either of them could say more, Daniel's phone buzzed loudly. He sighed, glancing at the screen, another crisis waiting for his attention. He gave Emily one last look, one that lingered longer than it should have. Then he turned and walked away, leaving her standing in the empty hall. Emily leaned against the wall, her heart racing. His words replayed in her mind, soft yet powerful. No one should have to live invisible. For the first time in years, she wondered, was it possible someone truly saw her? She didn't notice the pair of eyes watching from around the corner. Someone else had been listening, someone who didn't like what they saw. And that someone wasn't about to let this fragile connection grow. The following week passed slowly, yet quietly. For Daniel Harrison, the nights that had once been filled with numbers, contracts, and the endless glow of his office laptop were now invaded by the memory of a single moment, Emily Carter's fragile smile. He tried to push the thought away. He was a CEO, a man with responsibilities far greater than indulging in strange fascinations. But every evening, as he walked the halls of his towering building, he found his eyes searching unconsciously, hoping to see her pushing that squeaky cart, her tired frame moving silently through the polished corridors. And every time he did see her, something inside him softened. Emily, on the other hand, wrestled with confusion. Why was the CEO, the man at the very top of the world, showing kindness to her, a janitor struggling at the very bottom? She told herself it was pity. That had to be it. Rich men didn't fall for women like her. But the way he looked at her, it didn't feel like pity. One evening, Daniel caught Emily wiping down a glass wall in the lobby. He hesitated, then approached. "You've been avoiding me," he said gently. Emily's hand froze on the glass. Slowly, she turned, her eyes cautious. "I haven't. I've just been working." Daniel tilted his head, studying her face. "You don't have to hide it, Emily. I can see the exhaustion in your eyes. You're not just tired from work. You're carrying something." Emily swallowed hard. No one had ever said it so plainly before. She looked away, gripping her rag tightly. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, in a shaky voice, she whispered, "My father died 2 years ago. He was everything to us. My mother's health has been failing ever since. The medical bills, they never stop. And my younger brother, he's in high school. He's smart, he deserves a chance. But someone has to keep the lights on. Someone has to keep food on the table." Her voice cracked, but she forced herself to keep speaking. "So I work here at night. And I work mornings at a diner. Most days, I get maybe 2-3 hours of sleep. Sometimes none." Daniel's chest tightened painfully as her words sank in. The polished walls around them suddenly felt suffocating, mocking. How many times had he walked past these hallways, never thinking about the people scrubbing the floors that kept his empire shining? Emily gave a bitter laugh, though her eyes glistened with tears. "You must think I'm pathetic. A girl too poor to have a bed, too tired to stay awake, too desperate to stop." Daniel's voice came out rougher than he expected. "No. I don't think you're pathetic, Emily. I think you're the strongest person I've ever met." Emily blinked, stunned. No one had ever called her strong. To most, she was invisible, or worse, a burden. "Don't say that," she whispered, her eyes darting away. "You don't know me." Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I want to." For a moment, their eyes locked. The lobby seemed to fade around them, leaving only the two of them suspended in a fragile silence. Emily's heart pounded. She couldn't let this happen. She couldn't afford to dream. Dreams only left scars. She pulled back, quickly turning toward her cart. "I should get back to work." Daniel let her go, his hands tightening at his sides. He didn't push, but his resolve only deepened. He would find a way to show her she wasn't alone anymore. But far away, not everyone was blind to their growing connection. In a dimly lit corner of the building, two janitors whispered to each other as Emily walked away. "Did you see the way he looks at her?" one sneered. "The CEO and a janitor? She's playing him, that's what. Girls like her always want a shortcut." "Yeah," the other chuckled. "She's probably after his money. Can't trust a girl like that." What they didn't know was that their whispers carried farther than they thought. Emily had heard every cruel word. Her heart sank. She bit her lip hard, willing herself not to cry. She had been judged all her life, by strangers, by employers, by the world. But this time, it cut deeper, because for the first time in years, she had started to hope. She gripped the cart and forced herself to keep moving, but tears blurred her vision. Meanwhile, Daniel, alone in his office, stared out at the glittering city lights. He had no idea that Emily's hope was already cracking under the weight of whispers and shadows. And somewhere else in the city, behind a glass of whiskey, Mark Harrison, Daniel's cousin and rival, was already plotting. His lips curled into a cold smile as he murmured, "Let's see how long this little fairy tale lasts." Emily walked home that night with her head low, the city lights blurring through her tears. Every cruel word she had overheard kept replaying in her mind. She's playing him. She's after his money. She hated that it hurt so much, because part of her feared they were right. Not that she wanted his money. Never. But just the idea of her and Daniel together? It sounded ridiculous, laughable even. She was a janitor, barely surviving. He was a millionaire CEO, the kind of man who appeared in magazines. Her small apartment was dark when she entered, save for the faint glow of a lamp where her younger brother, Ethan, sat hunched over his textbooks. He looked up, concern flashing in his tired eyes. "You're late again, Em," he said softly. "Did something happen?" Emily forced a smile. "Just a long shift. Don't worry about me." But Ethan wasn't convinced. He could see the redness around her eyes. He closed his notebook and walked over, resting a hand on her shoulder. "You always say you're fine, but I can tell when you're breaking inside." Emily's chest tightened. She pulled her brother into a hug, hiding her face against him. I don't want you to worry. I want you to study, to focus on your future. That's all that matters." Ethan hugged her back, but his voice was firm. "You matter too, Em. Don't forget that." Her tears slipped silently down her cheeks as she held onto the only family she had left. Meanwhile, at the top floor of Harrison Enterprises, Daniel sat behind his massive desk, his tie loosened, his expression grim. His cousin, Mark Harrison, leaned casually against the bar cabinet in his office, swirling a glass of whiskey. "You've been distracted lately," Mark remarked with a sly grin. "Care to explain why?" Daniel didn't look up from his laptop. "I don't need to explain anything to you." "Oh, but you do," Mark pressed, stepping closer. "This company isn't just yours, Daniel. We share blood, and in case you've forgotten, the board listens to me too. If the CEO of Harrison Enterprises starts acting irrational, they'll want answers." Daniel's jaw tightened. "If you have a point, Mark, make it." Mark smirked, sipping his drink. "Fine. Let's talk about the janitor. Emily, isn't it? The one you've been so protective of." Daniel's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing dangerously. "Be careful what you say next." But Mark only chuckled darkly. "Relax, cousin. I'm not blind. I've seen the way you look at her. It's laughable, really. A man like you falling for a cleaning girl? Do you know what people would say? The shareholders would eat you alive. They'll say she's using you, and you'll look like a fool." Daniel stood abruptly, slamming his laptop shut. "Emily is none of your concern. And if I ever hear you speak about her again—" "What?" Mark interrupted, stepping forward with a smug smile. "You'll throw away your career for her? Your reputation? Everything you've built?" The room grew tense, a silent war sparking between their eyes. Daniel's voice dropped low, steady, and full of warning. "Stay out of this, Mark. Whatever you're planning, leave her out of it. She's not your pawn." Mark's smirk only widened. "We'll see about that." The next night, Emily arrived at work with her usual cart and mop. She kept her head down, determined to avoid everyone. But as she turned a corner, she was startled by the sight of Mark Harrison leaning against the wall, waiting for her. "Emily Carter," he drawled smoothly. "So we finally meet." Emily blinked, clutching her mop tighter. "Sir? Do you need something?" Mark's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I've heard a lot about you. The hard-working girl with the sad story. Impressive, really. But let me give you some advice. Stay in your lane. People like you don't belong in Daniel's world. Emily froze, her heart hammering in her chest. I don't know what you mean. Oh, I think you do, Mark said, stepping closer, his voice dripping with venom. Whatever fantasy you have about him, drop it. Because if you don't, I'll make sure this little job of yours disappears. And trust me, finding another one won't be easy. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to protest, to defend herself, but fear stole her words. She just nodded quickly, backing away. Mark gave a satisfied smile and whispered, "Good girl." Then he walked off, leaving her trembling in the empty hall. As tears filled her eyes, Emily whispered to herself, "Why does life keep punishing me for dreaming?" She didn't know that, only a few feet away, Daniel had stepped out of the elevator, just in time to see her crumbling against the wall. And he had also seen the shadow of Mark walking away. Daniel's fists clenched as a storm brewed inside him. His cousin had crossed a line. Daniel's steps echoed across the marble floor as he strode toward Emily. His chest tightened at the sight of her pressed against the wall, her hands trembling, tears glistening on her cheeks. "Emily," he said gently, his voice low but urgent. Her head snapped up. Panic filled her eyes, as if being caught crying was the greatest shame. She quickly wiped her face with the back of her sleeve. Mr. Harrison. I'm fine. Just tired, that's all." Daniel shook his head, frustration simmering beneath his calm tone. "Don't lie to me. I saw him. Mark was here, wasn't he?" Emily froze. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Daniel took a step closer, his voice softening. "What did he say to you?" Her throat tightened. She wanted to tell him the truth, that Mark had threatened her, that he had made her feel smaller than she already felt, but fear weighed on her tongue. What if telling Daniel only made things worse? What if Mark followed through and she lost her job? So she forced a small, trembling smile. "He didn't say much. Just a few words. Nothing important." Daniel's jaw clenched. He could see the lie in her eyes. He hated that she felt she had to protect herself even from him. He placed his hands gently on her shoulders, leaning closer. "Emily, listen to me. Whatever he said, whatever he threatened you with, I won't let him hurt you. Not now, not ever." Emily blinked, stunned by the conviction in his voice. Her heart pounded so hard she thought he might hear it. For a moment, she wanted to believe him, to let herself fall into the safety of his words. But reality crashed back. She pulled away, hugging her arms tightly around herself. "You don't understand, Daniel. You live in a world where men like Mark can't touch you. But me. I'm just a janitor. I can't afford to lose this job. If your cousin wants me gone, I'll be gone. That's the truth of it." Daniel's chest ached at her words. He wanted to tell her she wasn't just anything. That she was stronger, braver, and more important than she knew. But before he could speak, his phone buzzed sharply in his pocket. He glanced at the screen. It was the head of the board, requesting his immediate presence at a late-night emergency meeting. He cursed under his breath. Timing couldn't have been worse. "I have to go," he said reluctantly. "But, Emily, promise me you'll hold on. Don't let Mark scare you. I'll fix this." Emily looked at him with wide, tear-filled eyes but said nothing. Daniel lingered for a second, then turned and walked toward the elevator, his heart heavy. Later that night, Emily finished her shift and walked out into the cold air. Her legs felt weak, her chest heavy. She had thought she could handle insults, even threats. She'd been enduring them all her life. But this time it was different, because now her heart was involved. She paused outside the building, staring up at the glowing name Harrison Enterprises etched across the skyscraper. It felt like a wall, a reminder of how impossible it was to bridge the gap between his world and hers. With a deep breath, she whispered to herself, "I can't let myself dream. I have to stop before I get hurt." But as she walked away into the night, Daniel sat in the boardroom, his mind not on profits or mergers but on her. Every time one of the executives spoke, their voices blurred into nothing. All he could hear was Emily's trembling voice. "I'm just a janitor." No. She was more than that. And he would prove it to her. The next day, rumors spread quickly through the cleaning staff. Whispers carried like wildfire. "They say the CEO has a thing for Emily. She'll probably get promoted soon. That's how it always works." Mark was furious last night. He won't let this slide. Emily kept her head down, pretending she couldn't hear them. But each word stabbed at her already fragile heart. By the time she reached the restroom to scrub the floors, she collapsed onto her knees, gripping the mop with trembling hands. She whispered, almost angrily, "Why can't people just leave me alone?" The door creaked open behind her. A voice said softly, "Because they see something they don't understand." Emily turned quickly, and there he was. Daniel stood at the doorway, his tie loose, his eyes weary yet burning with determination. "Daniel," she breathed. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "Emily, I don't care what they say. I don't care what Mark does. I don't care about the board or the company's image. I just care about you." Her heart raced. "You don't mean that. You can't." But Daniel stepped closer, his voice steady. "I do. And one way or another, I'll prove it to you." Emily's lips trembled. She wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. But before she could answer, the door suddenly swung open. Standing there, his face twisted with cold amusement, was Mark Harrison. "Well," Mark said slowly, his voice dripping with mockery, "isn't this a cozy little scene?" Emily froze. Daniel's eyes hardened. And in that instant, both knew, the fight for their fragile bond had only just begun. The restroom door shut heavily behind Mark, the sound echoing in the tense silence. Emily's breath caught in her throat as his piercing eyes scanned between her and Daniel, his smirk widening with every second. "Well, well," Mark drawled, leaning against the wall as if he owned the place. The mighty Daniel Harrison, sneaking into janitor closets for midnight confessions. "Tell me, cousin, is this what's become of you? The man who once closed million-dollar deals, now wasting his time on charity cases." Emily flinched at his words, shame burning in her chest. But Daniel stepped in front of her protectively, his jaw clenched tight. "Watch your mouth, Mark," he said, his voice low and dangerous. Mark chuckled darkly. "Oh, I've hit a nerve, haven't I? This is even better than I thought. Do you realize what will happen if the board hears about this? A CEO in love with his janitor? They'll laugh you out of the company. You'll lose everything. And for what?" Daniel's fists tightened at his sides. "That's none of your business." But Mark stepped closer, his tone sharp. "It's entirely my business. This company is our family's legacy, Daniel. You risk it all for her, and I'll make sure the board destroys you." Emily's hands shook as she finally spoke up, her voice cracking. "Please, please don't fight because of me. I don't want to cause trouble. I'll stay away, I promise." Daniel spun around, his eyes burning with frustration. "No, Emily. Don't you dare blame yourself for this. None of this is your fault." But Emily's voice rose, tears filling her eyes. "It is my fault. I shouldn't even be talking to you. People like me don't belong in your world. And now your cousin is right. Everyone will think I'm using you." Her words cut into Daniel's chest like a blade. He hated seeing her believe the lies being thrown at her. He wanted to grab her shoulders and shake the doubt away, but she was already pulling back, her hands clutching her rag tightly like it was her only shield. Mark's smirk grew crueler as he watched the scene. "See, even she knows the truth. You don't belong together. She's smart enough to realize it. Maybe you should, too." Daniel's voice dropped, filled with venom. "Get out, Mark. Now." Mark raised his hands in mock surrender, chuckling as he backed toward the door. "Fine. But don't say I didn't warn you. This little fairy tale is going to end, and when it does, you'll lose more than just her." With that, he slipped out, leaving the air heavy and suffocating. Emily sank onto the edge of the sink, her body trembling. "He's right," she whispered, staring at the floor. "I can't do this, Daniel. I can't ruin your life." Daniel knelt in front of her, his eyes desperate. "Emily, look at me." Slowly, she raised her tear-filled eyes. "You are not ruining my life," he said firmly. "You're saving it." She shook her head quickly. "Don't say things like that. You don't know what you're doing. People like me, we don't get happy endings." Daniel's hand hovered near hers but didn't touch, as if afraid she'd pull away. "Then maybe it's time we prove them wrong." For a moment, silence stretched between them, broken only by Emily's uneven breaths. Deep down, a spark flickered in her heart, a dangerous, fragile hope. But the weight of fear pressed harder. She finally stood, stepping back. I need to work." Daniel rose slowly, his chest aching. He wanted to stop her, to hold her, to tell her she didn't have to face this world alone. But he saw the fear in her eyes, and he knew pushing her would only drive her farther away. So he let her walk past him, her figure shrinking with every step. Later that night, Mark sat in his sleek penthouse, a phone pressed to his ear. "Yes," he said smoothly. "I need everything you can find on her. Name, background, family, debts, secrets. Dig deep. If there's even a whisper of dirt on Emily Carter, I want it." He leaned back in his chair, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "Because if Daniel wants to play hero, I'll make sure his little Cinderella story burns before it even begins." The next evening, Emily arrived at work exhausted from her double shifts. As she scrubbed the floors, her body ached, but her mind ached even more. Every corner of the building whispered rumors, every glance from her co-workers felt heavy with judgment. She wanted to disappear. But just as her knees buckled from fatigue, a strong hand caught her arm. "Emily," Daniel's voice said softly, steadying her. "You're burning yourself out." Tears pricked her eyes, but she forced a small, tired smile. "That's my life, isn't it?" Daniel searched her face, his chest tightening. He wanted to lift her out of this life, to give her the comfort she deserved. But before he could speak, she pulled away gently. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Don't make me dream, Daniel. Dreams hurt too much when they die." And with that, she walked away, leaving him standing in the dim corridor, his heart aching. From the shadows, unseen, a private investigator snapped a photo of Emily's retreating figure, then of Daniel watching her. The first piece of Mark's cruel plan was already in motion. The city pulsed with its usual rhythm, cars rushing, neon lights glowing, people moving through the night with purpose. But for Emily, each step felt heavier than the last. She dragged her tired feet home after another late shift, clutching her worn-out jacket tighter against the cool air. Inside their small apartment, Ethan was already asleep on the couch, his textbooks scattered across the table. Emily gently tucked a blanket around him, her eyes softening as she looked at his peaceful face. For him, she would endure anything. But tonight, her mind was restless. Mark's cruel words echoed like poison. "People like you don't belong in Daniel's world." She shut her eyes tightly, whispering, "Maybe he's right. Maybe I need to end this before it destroys us both." Across town, in a lavish penthouse, Mark Harrison poured himself another drink as a folder slid across his glass desk. The private investigator sat across from him, his tone professional. "This is everything I could dig up on Emily Carter. She's 24. Father passed away 2 years ago. Mother's battling chronic illness. Lots of unpaid hospital bills. Brother in high school. She's been juggling 2 jobs to survive. No criminal record, but..." He flipped a page. "She's been late on rent multiple times, and there are loan notices in her name. Financially, she's drowning." Mark smirked, skimming the papers with cold satisfaction. So the perfect sob story. How convenient. The investigator hesitated. Sir, with respect, she doesn't seem like she's hiding anything malicious. She's just struggling. Mark's eyes hardened. You're missing the point. To the board, to the press, she won't look like a struggling girl. She'll look like a gold digger with debts, clinging to Daniel Harrison as her ticket out. He closed the folder with a snap. And when the time is right, I'll make sure the world sees her exactly that way. The next evening, Daniel found Emily in the staff lounge, slumped against a chair with her head in her hands. Her exhaustion was written across her face. Emily, he said softly, stepping closer. She startled, quickly straightening. Mr. Harrison. I was just taking a short break. Daniel frowned. Stop calling me that. It's Daniel. Her lips parted, but no words came. His voice had softened in a way that chipped at the walls around her heart. He crouched down so their eyes were level. I know you don't believe me yet, but I see you. I see how hard you fight every day. And it kills me to watch you suffer alone. Tears welled in Emily's eyes. She looked away, whispering, I don't need pity. His voice sharpened with emotion. This isn't pity. It's more than that. Her breath caught. She wanted to hear those words, it's love. But fear gripped her. Fear of losing her job, of being humiliated, of being destroyed by people like Mark. She stood abruptly, her voice shaky. You should stop, Daniel. Stop caring about me. It'll only hurt you. But Daniel rose too, determination burning in his eyes. Then let it hurt. Because you're worth it. Emily's tears finally spilled, but before she could respond, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She glanced at the screen and paled. It was the hospital. She answered quickly, her voice trembling. Hello. Yes, this is Emily Carter. What? No, please. Tell me she's okay. Daniel's chest tightened as he watched her crumble, her body shaking as she clutched the phone. When she hung up, her face was ghostly pale. It's my mom, she whispered. She collapsed. They've admitted her again. Daniel immediately placed a hand on her shoulder. Let me take you there. No, she said quickly, panic flashing in her eyes. I can't drag you into this. I'll manage. But her legs wobbled, and Daniel didn't hesitate. Emily, please. Let me help you. For once, she didn't argue. At the hospital, Emily sat by her mother's bedside, her hands gripping the frail woman's fingers tightly. Her mother, pale but conscious, gave her a weak smile. You shouldn't be here so late, sweetheart. You have work. Emily shook her head, tears falling. Don't worry about work. Just rest, Mom. Please. Daniel stood quietly at the door, watching the scene unfold. His heart ached seeing Emily's pain, her vulnerability, her fierce love for her family. He wanted nothing more than to take all her burdens away. But as he stepped into the room, her mother's eyes flicked to him. Despite her weakness, suspicion sharpened her gaze. And who is this? Emily's throat tightened. She couldn't find the words. Daniel stepped forward, his voice calm and respectful. I'm Daniel Harrison. I work with Emily. I just wanted to make sure she was safe tonight. Her mother studied him for a long moment, then whispered, A man like you doesn't follow my daughter to hospitals unless there's more to the story. Emily's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. Mom, please. But her mother's grip tightened on her hand. Emily, don't get too close to people from his world. They don't stay. And when they leave, it hurts worse than hunger. Emily's chest ached, her mother's warning echoing her own deepest fears. Daniel lowered his gaze, guilt gnawing at him. But inside, a silent vow took root. I will prove her wrong. I will stay. Outside the hospital, Mark sat in his car across the street, watching through the windshield as Daniel escorted Emily out, her shoulders slumped with exhaustion. His smirk returned as he snapped a photo with his phone, Emily leaning against Daniel for support. Perfect, he murmured. The board will eat this alive. The morning sun cast golden streaks across the towering glass of Harrison Enterprises, but inside the building, a storm was already brewing. Daniel sat in his office, his mind elsewhere, on Emily, her mother in the hospital, and the quiet strength she showed even as her world fell apart. He had spent most of the night by her side, and the image of her weeping quietly into her hands still haunted him. He longed to take her pain away, to shield her from everything. But as his phone buzzed with a meeting reminder, reality shoved its way back in. The board had called an emergency session. And he knew, deep in his gut, Mark had something to do with it. In the sleek, mahogany-floored boardroom, the members of the executive board sat in a semicircle, their faces tight with curiosity and concern. Daniel walked in with his usual confidence, but his sharp eyes immediately found Mark at the far end of the table, leaning back in his chair with a smug expression. "Let's begin," one of the senior board members said, clearing his throat. "Daniel, there are concerns about your recent behavior. Concerns raised by your cousin." Daniel's gaze locked onto Mark. "Of course there are." Mark rose smoothly, holding a folder in his hand. "Ladies and gentlemen of the board," he began, his voice polished with fake sincerity, "I regret having to bring this matter to your attention, but as stewards of this company, we must protect its reputation." He laid the folder on the table and slid photographs across the polished surface. The images were sharp, damning. Daniel leaving the hospital late at night with Emily, her leaning on him for support. Daniel standing too close to her in the staff lounge, Emily gazing up at him with exhaustion and something unspoken in her eyes. Murmurs rippled through the room. Mark's voice dripped with false concern. "This young woman, Emily Carter, a janitor employed by our company, has become involved with our CEO. Now, I am not here to judge personal choices, but optics matter. Investors will not take kindly to headlines painting our leader as a man compromised by a relationship with an employee, particularly one with significant financial struggles." He tapped the file for emphasis. "Debts, unpaid bills, hospital expenses. She's vulnerable. To put it bluntly, she has every reason to manipulate this situation for her own gain." Daniel's fists clenched on the table. "Enough." His voice was low, but the fury in it made the room fall silent. He stood, his eyes burning into Mark's. "Emily Carter is not some schemer trying to trap me. She is a hard-working, selfless woman who supports her sick mother and younger brother while working 2 jobs just to survive. She is the strongest person I have ever met. And you will not drag her name through the mud because you're too bitter to see what real strength looks like." A heavy silence followed. Some board members shifted uncomfortably, others avoided his eyes. Mark raised an eyebrow, his smirk never faltering. "Beautiful speech, cousin. But passion won't save this company when the press gets hold of those pictures. Think carefully. You're not just risking yourself, you're risking everyone sitting at this table." Daniel leaned forward, his voice sharp as glass. "If the board is more concerned with gossip than with the work I've done to make this company thrive, then perhaps you should reconsider who truly deserves to sit in this chair." The room bristled. Later, Daniel stormed out of the boardroom, his chest heaving. His assistant hurried after him. "Sir, should I cancel your appointments for the day?" Daniel didn't answer. He was already pulling out his phone. His only thought was of Emily. Meanwhile, Emily scrubbed the marble floors of the West Wing, her body aching from another sleepless night. The whispers around her were louder than ever now. "Did you hear? The CEO's in trouble because of her. She's going to get him fired. I bet she planned this from the start." Emily's hands shook as she scrubbed harder, her vision blurring with tears. She wanted to scream that they were wrong, that she never asked for this. But her voice felt trapped in her throat. Suddenly, Daniel's shadow fell across her. She looked up, startled. His face was tight with anger, not at her, but at the world around them. "Come with me," he said firmly. Emily blinked. "What? I can't. I'm working." "Not anymore," Daniel said, his tone leaving no room for argument. He reached down and gently took the mop from her trembling hands, setting it aside. Confused and frightened, she whispered, "Daniel, what's happening?" His eyes softened, though fire still burned beneath. Mark went to the board. "He's trying to ruin us both. He's using your struggles, your family, everything against you." Her heart sank, shame crashing over her. "I knew it. I told you this would happen. You should have stayed away from me." "No," Daniel said fiercely, his hand brushing her arm, grounding her. "I won't. I'd rather lose everything than walk away from you." Her lips parted, tears streaming down her face. She wanted to tell him she felt the same, but fear held her back. Before either could say more, a voice interrupted from behind. "Well, isn't this touching?" Emily and Daniel froze, turning to see Mr. Grant, her cruel supervisor, standing in the doorway with a sneer. "I knew something was going on," Grant said, his smile twisting with greed. "Guess what, sweetheart? People like me make deals. And if you don't want these rumors to destroy you, you're going to give me something in return." Emily's blood ran cold. Daniel's eyes darkened with rage. The walls were closing in, and Emily realized this was only the beginning of a battle she might not survive. The staff corridor was quiet, the hum of fluorescent lights buzzing faintly above. Emily stood frozen, Daniel tense beside her, as Mr. Grant leaned casually against the wall, his smug grin spreading wider by the second. "Well, Emily," Grant drawled, crossing his arms, "I knew you were trouble the minute you walked in here with those sad eyes and your mop. But this, getting cozy with the CEO? That's a new level." Emily's voice trembled. "It's not what you think." Grant chuckled darkly. "Oh, it doesn't matter what I think. What matters is what everyone else thinks. And trust me, right now, they're whispering your name in corners, wondering how a janitor managed to crawl her way into the boss's life." Daniel stepped forward, his jaw tight. "Watch your mouth, Grant." But Grant didn't flinch. Instead, his eyes gleamed with greed. "Relax, Mr. Harrison. I don't plan to ruin her. If she cooperates." Emily's stomach twisted. "She cooperates? With what?" Grant's tone lowered, slimy and dangerous. "Simple. You make things easier for me. Cover some of my missed inspections. Sign off on a few extra hours I didn't work. Maybe slip me access to areas you clean, where I don't technically belong. Do all that, and maybe I'll keep quiet." Emily's breath caught in horror. You want me to lie? To cheat? I can't." "You will," Grant interrupted coldly. "Unless you'd rather your sick mother and little brother find out you lost your job and your precious CEO drops you like the dirt you scrub off his floors." Her knees buckled. Daniel immediately caught her by the arm, his protective fury boiling over. "If you so much as breathe another threat toward her, I'll make sure you never work in this city again." Grant only smirked. "Big words. But even you, Mr. Harrison, can't control gossip. The more you defend her, the guiltier she looks. So maybe you should think twice before playing the knight in shining armor." When Grant finally walked away, his laughter echoing down the hallway, Emily collapsed onto a bench, her hands shaking uncontrollably. Daniel crouched in front of her, his eyes full of worry. "Emily, listen to me. Don't let that man scare you. I'll handle him." She shook her head violently, tears streaming down her face. "No, Daniel, you can't. You don't understand. Everywhere I go, people already look at me like I'm nothing. Like I don't belong. If Grant tells them I'm lying, cheating, if he drags my name through the mud, I'll lose everything. My job, my dignity, the little stability I have left." Her voice cracked. "And then what happens to Mom? To Ethan? They need me." Daniel's chest ached. He wanted to take her pain, to shield her, to shout to the world that Emily Carter was worth more than all their lies combined. Instead, he reached for her trembling hands, gripping them tightly. "You don't have to fight this alone anymore. Do you hear me?" His voice shook with emotion. "I don't care what Grant says, what Mark shows the board, or what the world whispers. I will not let them destroy you. Emily's eyes searched his face, desperate, terrified, and aching with unspoken feelings. For a heartbeat, it felt like she believed him. But then, her phone buzzed again. She glanced down, and her heart dropped. A new message. Final notice. Your mother's hospital bill is overdue. Immediate payment required. Her stomach churned. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. Daniel noticed the message over her shoulder, his jaw tightening. How much? Emily quickly shoved the phone away, shaking her head. No. Don't. You've done enough already. Emily. Daniel, please, she cried, her voice breaking. If I take your help, then Grant's right. Then Mark's right. Everyone will think I'm just using you. Her tears spilled faster now, her chest heaving with the weight of it all. I can't lose my dignity. Not like this. Daniel reached up, gently brushing away a tear with his thumb. His voice was barely above a whisper. You could never lose your dignity with me. But Emily pulled back, the walls rising again. Her fear was stronger than her hope. I need to be alone, she whispered, standing on shaky legs. Before Daniel could stop her, she walked away, her small figure swallowed by the endless, sterile hallways of the company she barely survived in. That night, Emily sat at her kitchen table, staring at a pile of bills, her head in her hands. Ethan was asleep in the next room, their mother still at the hospital. Her thoughts spiraled. If I give Grant what he wants, maybe he'll keep quiet. Maybe I can keep this job. Maybe Daniel won't be dragged down with me. But the idea made her sick. Betraying her values, losing herself just to survive. Was that what her life had become? A tear slid down her cheek. What am I supposed to do? She whispered into the silence. And then, her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't the hospital. It wasn't bills. It was a new message from an unknown number. She opened it, and her blood turned cold. The glow of Emily's phone screen cast eerie shadows across her tired face. Her hands trembled as she stared at the message, her heart pounding so hard it echoed in her ears. The photo of her and Daniel outside the hospital was sharp, unforgiving, and damning. To anyone else, it looked intimate, too intimate. And the message beneath it was colder than ice. If you don't play along, the world will see who you really are. Emily's chest tightened. She wanted to throw the phone across the room, to erase the evidence, but her body felt paralyzed. A whisper slipped through her lips. Why is this happening to me? The next morning, Emily dragged herself to work. Her eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep, and her hands trembled as she pushed her cleaning cart. Every step through the gleaming hallways felt like walking into a trap. Every whisper from the other staff sounded sharper, heavier. There she is. The janitor who thinks she's special. Bet she's smiling now that she's got the CEO wrapped around her finger. She won't last. Girls like her never do. Emily kept her head down, swallowing the lump in her throat. Don't cry. Not here. Not in front of them. But when she turned a corner, she froze. Daniel stood there, waiting. He looked exhausted too, dark circles under his eyes, his jaw tight with sleepless anger. But when his gaze landed on her, it softened instantly. Emily, he said gently. Her throat closed. She wanted to run, to hide from him, from everyone, but his voice rooted her in place. Talk to me, Daniel pleaded, stepping closer. What's going on? You've been avoiding me. I can see you're hurting, but you won't let me in. Tears welled in her eyes. She shook her head. Daniel, please, don't ask me that right now. You can't fix this. You can't. His hands clenched at his sides. I can try. But you won't even let me. Emily bit her lips so hard she tasted blood. If she told him about the blackmail, about the photo, it could destroy him. The board was already against him. Mark was already waiting to strike. One wrong move, and Daniel would lose everything. So she whispered the only thing she could, stay away from me, Daniel. For your own good. The words broke her heart the moment they left her mouth. Daniel's face went pale, his voice cracking. You don't mean that. But she turned away, forcing herself to keep walking. Each step felt like knives cutting into her chest, but she didn't dare look back. That afternoon, Emily sat in the staff lounge, her head buried in her arms, trying to hold herself together. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. This time, not a photo, just words. Meet me in the basement storage room at midnight. Alone. Or the photo goes public. Her stomach lurched. She wanted to scream, to throw the phone away, but fear gripped her throat. She couldn't risk the world seeing those pictures, twisting the truth, painting her as a manipulator. She couldn't risk Ethan's friends mocking him at school. She couldn't risk her mother collapsing under the stress. Her dignity wasn't worth their suffering. But going alone into that basement, she shuddered at the thought. Meanwhile, in the executive offices upstairs, Mark Harrison poured himself another glass of whiskey, lounging in his leather chair. A phone buzzed on his desk. He smirked at the message flashing across the screen. She'll be in the basement tonight. Midnight. Mark leaned back, his grin spreading. Perfect. Let's see how far the janitor will go to protect her little secrets. Midnight came too quickly. Emily stood at the top of the basement stairwell, her hands clutching the railing so tightly her knuckles turned white. The building was silent, the kind of silence that pressed on her ears and made her heart race. She whispered to herself, "You're doing this for them. For Mom. For Ethan. You can handle this." Her footsteps echoed as she descended into the dimly lit basement. The air smelled faintly of dust and old cleaning supplies. Every shadow seemed to move, every creak made her flinch. When she reached the storage room, the door was already ajar. She pushed it open slowly. Inside, the room was dark, only one flickering bulb overhead. Boxes were stacked high, casting looming shadows across the walls. And there, leaning against the far wall, arms crossed, smirk plastered on his face, stood Mr. Grant. Emily's stomach dropped. "I was wondering if you'd show," Grant said smoothly, his voice dripping with arrogance. "Guess the little janitor will do anything to keep her secrets safe." Emily's knees nearly gave out. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. Grant stepped closer, the shadows swallowing his face. "Simple. Obedience. You'll do what I say, when I say it. Or I'll make sure everyone sees exactly who you are. A desperate girl clinging to the CEO like a lifeline." Emily's hands shook uncontrollably. "You can't." "Oh, I can." Grant cut her off, his grin widening. "And trust me, I will. Unless you prove to me tonight that you're willing to play along." Emily's chest heaved, her mind screaming. Trapped. No way out. But just as Grant reached for her arm, a voice thundered from the doorway. "Get your hands off her." Emily spun around, her breath catching. Daniel stood there, fury blazing in his eyes. The flickering bulb overhead buzzed weakly, casting fractured light across the dusty storage room. Emily stood frozen, her back against the wall, fear tightening around her chest like chains. And in the doorway, tall, furious, unmovable, stood Daniel Harrison. His voice cut through the silence, low and sharp. "I said get your hands off her." Mr. Grant's grin faltered for the first time. His hand dropped slowly from where it hovered near Emily's arm, but his eyes narrowed. "Well, well, the knight in shining armor shows up again. You just can't resist saving the damsel. Can you, Mr. Harrison?" Daniel stepped into the room, his presence filling the space like a storm. "She doesn't need saving from me. She needs saving from scum like you." Grant laughed, though it sounded hollow now. "Scum? No, I'm just practical. I know leverage when I see it. And right now, the two of you are standing in the middle of the kind of scandal that can bury you alive. One word from me, and this whole company knows the truth." Emily's voice cracked. "It's not the truth. You're twisting everything." Grant sneered. "Perception is truth, sweetheart. Don't you get it? It doesn't matter what's real, it matters what people believe. And I can make them believe anything. Daniel's fists clenched at his sides. Then hear me clearly, if you even think about spreading one more lie about her, I will destroy you. Not just your job, not just your reputation. I will make sure you never find another company, another building, another corner of this city to crawl into. The fury in his voice sent a chill through the room. But Grant only smirked again, recovering his bravado. Big words, cousin of a billionaire family. But your board already doubts you. Your investors are restless. If I leak the right photos, the right story, your empire crumbles overnight. And you'll have no one to blame but yourself, for falling for a janitor. The word dripped with contempt, stabbing Emily like a knife. Daniel moved so fast it startled even Emily. He grabbed Grant by the collar, slamming him against the wall, his eyes blazing with fury. You don't get to say her name like that, Daniel growled, his voice trembling with barely contained rage. You don't get to reduce her worth to her job. She is worth more than this entire building, more than every dollar in my bank account, more than men like you will ever understand. Grant struggled, his smirk finally breaking as fear flickered in his eyes. Why, you wouldn't dare. Daniel tightened his grip. Try me. For a moment, the room held its breath. The flickering bulb buzzed louder, the shadows deepening, as if the building itself leaned in to listen. Emily rushed forward, her voice breaking. Daniel, stop. Please. Her hands wrapped around his arm, her touch grounding him, pulling him back from the edge. Slowly, with visible effort, Daniel released Grant, shoving him away with disgust. Grant stumbled, gasping, his face pale. But as he straightened his shirt, a twisted grin crept back onto his lips. You think this is over? You think you've won because you scared me? No, Mr. Harrison. All you've done tonight is prove how deep you've fallen. And that fall is going to cost you everything. Emily's stomach turned cold. His words weren't empty, they carried the weight of something planned, something bigger. Outside, the night air was sharp against her skin as Daniel led Emily out of the building, his hand hovering protectively near hers. She walked in silence, her mind spinning with fear and shame. Finally, Daniel stopped under a streetlight, turning to her. His voice was gentler now, though his eyes still burned. Emily, why didn't you tell me? About the messages. About Grant. About all of it. Tears filled her eyes. Because I didn't want to drag you down. I thought if I just stayed quiet, maybe it would pass. Maybe I could handle it on my own. Daniel's voice cracked, filled with raw emotion. You don't have to handle it alone anymore. Don't you understand? You're not alone. Not with me. Her lips trembled. The walls she had built around her heart shook under the weight of his words. For a moment, she wanted to let them fall completely. But before she could speak, the sound of a camera shutter echoed faintly from the shadows across the street. Emily's head whipped around, eyes wide. Did you hear that? Daniel tensed, scanning the darkness. But whoever was there was gone. Emily's chest tightened. It wasn't just Grant. Someone else was watching. Someone else wanted them destroyed. And neither of them knew how close the noose was tightening. The morning began like any other in the city, streets filled with honking cars, coffee shops bustling with sleepy customers, businessmen rushing towards skyscrapers with briefcases in hand. But inside the shimmering glass tower of Harrison Enterprises, silence fell like a heavy curtain. Because on every phone, every screen, every whisper in the lobby, the same headline glared in bold letters. Scandal at Harrison Enterprises. CEO Daniel Harrison involved with Janitor? Beneath the headline were photos. Sharp, damning photos. Daniel escorting Emily out of the hospital, his arm protectively hovering near her. Emily leaning against him, eyes weary but vulnerable. Daniel's furious expression as he confronted Grant in the storage hallway snapped perfectly to look like aggression toward Emily instead. The captions twisted the truth into poison. CEO abuses position of power with employee. Insider claims janitor using financial struggles to trap billionaire heir. Harrison Enterprises faces leadership crisis amid scandal. By 9 a.m., the building buzzed like a hornet's nest. Employees huddled in corners, whispering, eyes darting toward Emily whenever she passed. Some glared with contempt. Others sneered openly. Emily clutched her cleaning cart tighter, her pulse racing as she overheard snippets. She's nothing but a gold digger. He'll toss her aside soon, like the rest. Poor girl probably thinks this ends with a wedding. Her cheeks burned with shame. Her chest ached so badly it felt like she couldn't breathe. Upstairs, in the executive floor, Daniel stormed into the boardroom. The long table was filled, every member tense, their faces grim. Mark sat at the end, calm, composed, and sipping coffee as though the world hadn't just exploded. Daniel slammed a stack of newspapers onto the table. Who leaked this? The room stayed silent. But Mark set down his cup, his tone dripping with false innocence. Daniel, maybe the better question is, why is there even something to leak? Daniel's fists clenched. Don't you dare. Mark leaned back, eyes gleaming. You think you can mix business with whatever this is? You think shareholders will overlook you parading around with a janitor while this company's value plummets? No, cousin. They won't. And neither will I. A senior board member cleared his throat. Daniel, this has gone too far. The company is under scrutiny. Investors are pulling back. Unless this situation is rectified immediately, your leadership will be questioned. Daniel's voice was sharp as steel. So you want me to fire her? Pretend she means nothing to me. The board member avoided his eyes. We're asking you to protect the company. Daniel's heart thundered with rage. And what about protecting the truth? Mark smirked. Truth doesn't matter, Daniel. Perception does. And the perception is clear. She's a liability. You either cut her loose, or you take us all down with you. Downstairs, Emily was summoned to the HR office. She sat stiffly in the small, sterile room as the HR manager, Ms. Thompson, cleared her throat awkwardly. Emily, she began gently, I'm afraid the company has to investigate these allegations. Until then, you are suspended without pay. Emily's heart dropped. Suspended? But I didn't do anything wrong. Ms. Thompson sighed, her tone soft but firm. I believe you, but public pressure is building. The board wants distance between you and Mr. Harrison. This isn't personal, it's business. Emily's hands shook as she gripped her bag. Everything is personal when it's my life. She walked out of the office in a daze. Every pair of eyes followed her, some with pity, most with judgment. Her world felt like it was crumbling beneath her feet. That evening, Emily sat at the hospital beside her mother's bed. The older woman looked frail, her breaths shallow. Ethan sat quietly in the corner, his eyes full of worry. Emily tried to smile, tried to be strong, but the weight of the scandal pressed on her chest like a stone. Her mother's voice was weak but firm. Tell me the truth, Emily. Is it real? Do you love him? Tears welled in Emily's eyes. She whispered, Yes, Mom. But it doesn't matter. They're tearing us apart. And I don't know if he can survive it. Her mother reached for her hand, her fragile fingers squeezing gently. Then hold on, Emily. If it's real, don't let them scare you away. Emily bit her lip, her heart torn in two. But what if my love costs him everything? Meanwhile, in his penthouse, Daniel stood at the window, staring at the city lights below. His phone buzzed endlessly, calls from lawyers, investors, even his own father demanding answers. But he ignored them all. His only thought was Emily. He whispered to himself, I'll find a way. I won't lose her. Not like this. But across town, Mark poured himself another drink, watching the news report play on his television. Emily's face flashed on the screen beside Daniel's, labeled with cruel headlines. Mark smirked. Round one goes to me. He raised his glass in a mock toast, his eyes glinting with malice. Let's see how long true love survives when the whole world wants it dead. The city didn't sleep that week. Headlines blared from every screen. Social media buzzed with cruel debates. Talk shows tore apart Daniel's image. Hashtags with Emily's name trended, not with kindness, but with ridicule. At Harrison Enterprises, the atmosphere was poisonous. Investors whispered about resignations. Board members threatened a vote of no confidence. Employees spoke Emily's name like it was a curse. And Emily felt the weight of it all pressing down on her. That night, she stood by the small window in her apartment, staring out at the glowing skyline. Her reflection in the glass looked unfamiliar, tired, broken, her eyes red from endless tears. Ethan entered quietly, his hands stuffed into his pockets. He looked at her, then at the floor. Emily, you can't keep doing this. Every time I check my phone, there's another article. Another insult. You're not just hurting, you're letting them destroy you. Her lips trembled. I know. But what choice do I have? Everywhere I go, people look at me like I'm dirt. Like I stole something that wasn't mine to have. Ethan's voice cracked, a mix of pain and frustration. You didn't steal anything. You just loved someone. Is that a crime now? Emily turned away, tears spilling silently down her cheeks. It feels like it is. The next morning, Daniel showed up at her apartment. His usually sharp suit was wrinkled, his face tired, his eyes shadowed from lack of sleep. But when she opened the door, the fire in his gaze didn't waver. Emily, he said softly, we need to talk. She hesitated, glancing at Ethan, who gave her a small nod before slipping out to give them privacy. Daniel stepped inside, running a hand through his hair. The board is demanding I step down if I don't cut ties with you. Investors are pulling out. They've already canceled 2 major deals. They think you're ruining me. Emily's heart clenched. She whispered, and maybe they're right. Daniel froze. What did you just say? Her voice shook as she forced the words out. Daniel, look around you. Look at what this has done to your life. To your company. To your future. I can't let you lose everything because of me. He stepped forward, grabbing her shoulders, his eyes burning into hers. Don't you get it? None of that matters. Not the board, not the money, not the empire. You're what matters. You. Her tears fell harder. But what if I'm the reason you lose it all? Then let me lose it, he whispered fiercely. Because none of it means anything without you. Her chest heaved with sobs as she tried to pull away. Daniel, stop, please. If you love me, then let me go before they destroy you completely. His grip tightened for a moment, desperation flashing across his face. Then, slowly, his hands fell away, his jaw clenching. You really think walking away will protect me? He said bitterly. You think Mark will stop? You think the board will suddenly forgive me? No, Emily. The only thing you'll accomplish is breaking my heart, and yours. She couldn't meet his eyes. Her silence spoke louder than words. Daniel swallowed hard, his voice raw. If that's what you want, if you really believe this is the way, then say it. Look me in the eye, and tell me you don't love me. Emily's lips quivered. She opened her mouth, but the words refused to come. Her heart screamed I love you, but her fear screamed louder. Finally she whispered, Goodbye, Daniel. The words shattered him. He stood still, his breath shallow, his hands trembling at his sides. His eyes searched hers, desperate for a flicker of doubt, a hint that she didn't mean it. But Emily had turned away, her back to him, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. After a long, suffocating silence, Daniel's footsteps echoed as he walked to the door. He paused, his voice low and broken. You can push me away, Emily. But it won't change the truth. I love you. And nothing, not the board, not the world, not even you, can take that from me. Then the door closed behind him, leaving her collapsed on the floor, her sobs filling the empty room. That same evening, Mark poured himself another glass of wine as he watched the news. The anchor's voice was triumphant. Unconfirmed sources suggest CEO Daniel Harrison may be forced to resign in the coming days. Insiders cite personal scandal as the root cause. Mark smirked, muttering to himself, "Perfect. Just perfect." But then his phone buzzed with a message. He glanced down, and froze. The text was from an unknown number. "Careful, Mark. Secrets don't stay buried forever. You're not the only one with leverage." His smirk faded, replaced by a flicker of unease. For the first time, Mark realized, someone else was playing this game. And maybe, he wasn't the one in control after all. The days after Daniel walked out blurred into one long stretch of emptiness for Emily. Her phone buzzed constantly with news alerts, social media notifications, and cruel messages from strangers who didn't even know her. She turned it off and buried it in a drawer, unable to bear the words anymore. She spent most nights at the hospital, keeping vigil beside her mother's bed. The monitors beeped steadily, the room faintly lit by the soft glow of machines. Her mother would sometimes wake, her frail hand reaching for Emily's. "Don't cry, sweetheart," her mother whispered weakly one night. "If it hurts this much, it means it's real. Real love doesn't come without pain." Emily bit her lip hard, tears spilling. "But if I stay, he loses everything. If I go, I lose him. Either way, someone suffers." Her mother squeezed her hand gently. "Love is sacrifice, Emily. But the right kind of love, it doesn't ask you to destroy yourself. It asks you to fight, for each other, not against." Emily didn't answer. Her chest felt like it was being torn apart. Meanwhile, Daniel buried himself in work. The board circled him like vultures, demanding answers, pushing for his resignation. Every meeting was a battlefield. Investors threatened to withdraw unless he issued a statement denouncing Emily. But Daniel refused. He sat in his office, staring at the draft of a press release on his desk. All he had to do was sign it. It would declare Emily nothing more than a misunderstood rumor. It would save his career. And it would erase her from his life. He picked up the pen, and dropped it with a curse, slamming his fist against the desk. "I can't," he muttered. "I won't." Across town, Mark was restless. That anonymous message had unsettled him. He scrolled through his phone nervously, replaying the words. "Secrets don't stay buried forever. You're not the only one with leverage." But who could it be? He had planned everything so carefully, planting the photographer, bribing employees, twisting stories. He had cornered Daniel perfectly. Yet now, someone else was watching. Someone who knew about his secrets. And Mark had plenty of them. That night, as he sat in his sleek, dimly lit penthouse, he poured himself another drink. The city lights glittered below, but his eyes kept darting to the shadows in the corners of the room, as if he expected someone to emerge. His phone buzzed again. Another message. "You think you're smart. But I know what you did 5 years ago. If Daniel falls, you're falling with him." Mark's hand tightened around the glass until it shattered, whiskey spilling across the table. His heart raced. 5 years ago. He hadn't thought anyone knew. Someone did. Back in her apartment, Emily sat on her small bed, clutching a worn photograph of her family. Her younger self, her mother healthy and smiling, Ethan with his mischievous grin. She whispered to the picture, as though it could hear her. "I'm so tired of being strong. I just want to be happy. Is that too much to ask?" Her tears dripped onto the frame, and in that moment, the loneliness felt unbearable. Then, a knock at the door startled her. She froze. Wiping her face quickly, she stood and opened it just a crack. It wasn't Daniel. It was a man she had never seen before. Tall, sharp suit, dark eyes that studied her carefully. He spoke in a calm, deliberate voice. "Emily Thompson?" She hesitated. "Yes." The man handed her an envelope. "This is for you. Think carefully before you open it. The truth inside could save him, or destroy him." Before she could respond, he turned and disappeared down the hallway, his footsteps echoing until they faded. Emily stood trembling, the envelope heavy in her hands. She shut the door, staring at it with wide eyes. On the front, written in neat black ink, were 3 words. About Mark Grant. Her pulse raced. Her breath came in shallow gasps. Could this be the answer? The weapon Daniel needed to fight back? Or was it another trap waiting to pull them both under? Her hands shook as she slid her finger under the seal. Emily sat at the edge of her bed, the mysterious envelope heavy in her trembling hands. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the city outside her window. Her chest tightened with every breath as questions swirled in her mind. Who sent this? Could it really help Daniel? Or was it another trap to destroy us both? Her fingers shook as she tore the seal open and slid out the papers inside. The first page was a document, old, faded, but stamped with the seal of the state. Her eyes scanned the words, confusion clouding her expression, until her breath caught. Embezzlement Investigation Report. Subject, Mark Grant. Her heart pounded. The words blurred as she read. 5 years ago, Mark had been involved in siphoning money from a development project under another company's name. Millions of dollars had vanished. The investigation had mysteriously gone cold, buried under insufficient evidence. But attached to the report was something else. Photographs. Clear, undeniable photographs. Mark meeting secretly with a man in a parking garage. Envelopes exchanging hands. And then, an affidavit. Signed by a whistleblower. A man who claimed Mark had paid him to falsify financial records. Emily's hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God. Mark's not just cruel. He's criminal. The final sheet was a simple note, written in the same neat black ink as on the envelope. He buried this once. Don't let him bury it again. Use it before it's too late. Emily dropped the papers on her bed, her head spinning. The truth was like fire in her hands. Dangerous, powerful, impossible to ignore. Hours later, Emily found herself at the hospital again, the envelope hidden in her bag. Her mother lay sleeping, her chest rising and falling softly. Ethan sat beside her, flipping through a comic book to keep himself distracted. Emily sat down heavily, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan, what if you had something that could save someone you cared about, but using it might destroy someone else completely? Ethan looked up, frowning. You mean like, exposing a secret? She nodded, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. Ethan leaned forward, his voice steady. If that someone else is hurting people, then maybe it's not really destroying them, it's just making the truth come out. And sometimes the truth is the only way to set people free. Emily blinked at her younger brother, surprised by his wisdom. Tears filled her eyes. You sound just like Dad used to. Ethan shrugged. Maybe I just don't like seeing you hurt anymore. Across the city, Daniel sat alone in his penthouse. The city lights glittered outside the glass walls, but he couldn't see their beauty. His desk was buried in papers, letters from investors, demands from the board, legal threats piling up higher each day. His phone buzzed again. His father's name lit the screen. For the 100th time, he ignored it. Instead, he opened the drawer of his desk and pulled out a small photograph. Emily, smiling faintly, her hair loose around her shoulders, taken on the day she had laughed in the rain outside his car. His chest ached. Why did you push me away? He whispered. Don't you know I'd burn this whole empire down just to keep you safe? His reflection in the glass looked tired, broken, but beneath it burned the same fire that had always driven him. He wouldn't let Mark win. Meanwhile, in his penthouse, Mark paced restlessly, his phone pressed to his ear. What do you mean there's chatter about the old project? He snapped at the voice on the other end. That case is dead. I made sure of it. If anyone digs it up, I'll... He stopped, his hand tightening around the phone as his blood ran cold. A message notification blinked across the screen. It was the same unknown number. Tick-tock, Mark. The past is catching up. Mark slammed his phone onto the counter, his jaw clenched. Someone is out there. Someone who knows too much. And for the first time, he realized, his carefully built power was a fragile glass tower, and one stone could shatter it to pieces. Late that night, Emily sat at her small kitchen table, the envelope spread before her once more. Her hands hovered over the papers, torn between fear and hope. Her heart whispered, this could save Daniel. Her fear screamed, but if I use it, Mark will know it came from me. He'll destroy me. She squeezed her eyes shut, tears slipping down her cheeks. God, what do I do? Just then, her phone buzzed, the screen lighting up with a message. It was from Daniel. Only 4 words. I still love you. Emily's chest heaved with sobs as she pressed the phone to her heart. And in that moment, she knew, she couldn't stay silent anymore. But what she didn't know was that someone was already watching her from the shadows outside her window, their eyes glinting as they saw the envelope in her hands. The next morning, Emily stood in front of her mirror, staring at her reflection. Her face was pale, her eyes tired, but behind them burned something new, resolve. On her small table, the envelope sat neatly tucked into her bag. She had made up her mind. Today, she would go to Daniel. She would show him the truth about Mark. She would fight, not just for herself, but for them. For the first time in days, she felt a spark of hope. Daniel was in the middle of another brutal board meeting when his phone buzzed quietly under the table. He glanced down. A message from Emily. I need to see you. It's important. Tonight. Please. His chest tightened. For days, he had drowned in silence from her. Now, this. He typed back quickly, anywhere, anytime. I'll come to you. But before he could hit send, Mark's voice cut through the room. Daniel, are you even listening? Investors want answers. You can't keep ignoring this scandal. Daniel shoved his phone away, his jaw clenched. The only thing I'm ignoring, Mark, is your lies. And when the truth comes out, you'll regret ever stepping foot in this company. For a flicker of a second, Mark's smirk faltered. He had seen the determination in Daniel's eyes. Something had shifted. That evening, Emily made her way to a small cafe downtown. She chose it because it was quiet, tucked into the corner of a street few people visited. She sat at a table near the back, the envelope clutched tightly in her bag. Every tick of the clock made her more restless. Finally, Daniel walked in. The sight of him, tired but still impossibly strong, made her heart ache. Their eyes met across the room. For a moment, it felt like the chaos outside had melted away. Just him. Just her. He slid into the seat across from her, his voice low, gentle. Emily. Her hands trembled as she pulled the envelope from her bag. Daniel, there's something you need to see. Something that could change everything. But before she could open it, a shadow loomed. A man in a black suit approached the table, placing a folded note in front of Emily. He didn't say a word. He just set it down and walked away. Emily's blood ran cold. Daniel frowned, picking up the note. His eyes scanned the words, his jaw tightening with every line. Stay quiet, Emily. If you open your mouth, your brother pays the price. Her breath hitched. Ethan. Daniel's hands clenched the paper so tightly it nearly tore. His voice dropped to a dangerous growl. He's threatening your brother now? Emily's eyes filled with tears. I can't risk Ethan. If something happens to him, it'll be my fault. Daniel leaned across the table, his voice sharp but filled with pain. And if we let Mark keep doing this, he'll never stop. He's already taken enough from you. From us. Emily shook her head, panic choking her. No. Daniel. Please. Not Ethan. I can't gamble with his life. Daniel's heart pounded with fury, but before he could answer, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and froze. A photograph. Ethan, walking alone outside the hospital. And behind him, a black car. The caption, "One wrong move and he disappears." Daniel's stomach dropped. His blood ran cold. Emily saw the photo and gasped, her hand covering her mouth. Oh my God, they're watching him. Daniel slammed the phone down, his eyes blazing with rage. This isn't a warning. This is war. He stood abruptly, grabbing Emily's hand. Come on. We're not staying here. They rushed out of the cafe, Emily clutching the envelope against her chest as though it were both salvation and curse. But as they stepped into the night, the black car from the photo rolled slowly past the corner, its tinted windows hiding whoever sat inside. Daniel's grip on Emily tightened. He whispered fiercely, "We have to move fast, before he takes everything from us." But deep down, he knew. Mark wasn't just threatening anymore. He was hunting. And Ethan's life was the bait. The night was restless. Emily couldn't sit still, pacing the small living room of her apartment while Daniel tried to calm her. The envelope sat on the table between them, a silent reminder of the truth they hadn't yet unleashed. Her voice broke as she whispered, "Daniel, if anything happens to Ethan, I'll never forgive myself. He's the only family I have left." Daniel stepped closer, his hand brushing her arm, his voice low but firm. "We won't let Mark touch him. I swear to you, Emily. I'll protect him like he's my own brother." Emily closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. For a moment, she let herself lean into Daniel's strength, drawing comfort from the warmth of his embrace. But the peace shattered when her phone buzzed violently on the table. She snatched it up, and the color drained from her face. It was Ethan's number. But the message wasn't from him. "He's with us now. If you want him alive, stay quiet. Burn the envelope. Midnight instructions will follow. Emily's legs gave out, and she sank onto the couch, her hands shaking. "No, no, no, no." Daniel grabbed the phone, his jaw clenching as he read the message. Fury burned in his eyes, but beneath it, terror flickered. "They took him," Daniel whispered. "Mark actually took Ethan." At that same moment, Ethan sat in the back of a dark van. His wrists were tied, his eyes wide with fear, but he tried to stay brave. He thought of his mother, of Emily, of how hard she'd fought to protect him. One of the men sitting across from him smirked. "You're just leverage, kid. Don't make this harder than it has to be." Ethan swallowed hard, his voice shaking but defiant. "My sister will come for me. And so will Daniel." The man laughed. "Daniel Harrison? He's already finished. By the time this is over, nobody will even remember your names." But Ethan held onto hope. Deep inside, he believed his sister wouldn't give up. Back at the apartment, Emily clutched Daniel's arm desperately. "We can't go to the police. If Mark has people everywhere, Ethan's dead the second they find out." Daniel nodded grimly. "Which means we handle this ourselves. No mistakes." Emily pulled the envelope closer, her voice trembling. "This is the only weapon we have. But if we use it wrong, Ethan could be the one who pays." Daniel sat across from her, his eyes fierce. "Emily, Mark is desperate. That means he's dangerous, but it also means he's sloppy. Somewhere in this, there's a way to outsmart him. We just have to find it." Her heart pounded. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe they could fight back. But fear gnawed at her every thought. Then another message buzzed in. "Midnight. Pier 47. Come alone. Bring the envelope. No tricks, or the boy dies." Emily's hand flew to her mouth. "Pier 47. It's the abandoned docks. It's a trap, Daniel." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Of course it is. But it's also our only chance." He reached across the table, taking her hands in his. His voice softened, full of emotion. "Emily, listen to me. We're going to save Ethan. We're going to end this. But I need you to trust me, no matter what happens tonight." Her eyes filled with tears. she whispered. I do trust you. I always have. Their hands tightened together, two broken souls clinging to the only light left. Midnight came too quickly. The air at the docks was thick with fog, the waves slapping against the rotting wood. Emily walked nervously beside Daniel, the envelope tucked inside her jacket. Every creak of the pier, every shadow, made her jump. A black SUV waited under the faint glow of a broken lamp. From the back, Mark stepped out, dressed immaculately in a dark coat, his smile cruel. Well, well. The lovebirds arrive. His eyes flicked to the envelope. I see you brought my little problem. Daniel stepped forward, his voice like ice. Where's Ethan? Mark smirked and snapped his fingers. Two men dragged Ethan from the SUV. His wrists were bound, but he was alive, his eyes wide with relief when he saw Emily. Emily! He shouted, but a guard shoved him down to silence him. Emily's heart broke at the sight. She took a step forward, but Daniel's hand shot out, stopping her. His voice was low and warning. Careful. This is what he wants. Mark chuckled darkly. Smart man. But not smart enough. Here's the deal, you give me that envelope right now, and I let the boy go. Refuse, and, well, accidents happen at the docks all the time. The waves crashed harder against the wood, the tension thick enough to choke. Emily's pulse pounded in her ears as she clutched the envelope. Daniel's voice cut through the night, steady, sharp. You think you're holding all the cards, Mark. But maybe, just maybe, you've underestimated us. Mark's smirk faltered for the briefest second. And in that breath of silence, Emily realized, Daniel had a plan. But what it was, she didn't know. The fog wrapped around the docks like a ghostly curtain, the waves slamming against the wooden pillars below. Emily's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. She clutched the envelope against her chest, every instinct screaming to run. But Ethan's frightened eyes, bound and helpless, kept her rooted in place. Mark's voice sliced through the night. The envelope, Emily. Hand it over. Do that, and your brother walks away. Emily looked at Daniel. His eyes were locked on Mark, calm but burning with intensity. It was the look of a man who had already made a choice. Daniel stepped forward slowly, his voice steady. You've underestimated Emily. And you've underestimated me. You think this is about one envelope? No, Mark. This is about truth. Mark's smirk wavered. Spare me the speeches. Give me the papers, or the boy's blood is on your hands. Emily's breath caught, but Daniel's hand brushed hers briefly, a silent reassurance. Then Daniel's voice sharpened. Funny thing about the truth, Mark, it doesn't stay buried. Not even when you threaten children. Mark snapped his fingers. One of his men shoved Ethan to his knees at the edge of the pier, the black water churning below. Emily gasped, her voice breaking. Please, don't hurt him. I'll give it to you. She fumbled with the envelope, her tears spilling freely. Mark's smile widened, victory gleaming in his eyes. That's right. Good girl. But as Emily held out the envelope, Daniel suddenly raised his phone high, his thumb hovering over the screen. His voice thundered. Step away from him, Mark. Right now. Or the whole world sees what's inside this envelope before your men even blink. Mark froze. What? Daniel's jaw tightened. While you've been busy threatening us, I've been busy too. The contents of this envelope, they're already scanned. One tap, and every major news outlet in the city gets a copy. Police. Investors. Everyone. Emily's eyes widened. She hadn't known Daniel had done this. Mark's face twisted, fury breaking through his calm facade. You're bluffing. Daniel took a slow step forward, his voice like steel. Try me. The standoff thickened, the air so heavy Emily could hardly breathe. One wrong move, and everything would explode. Ethan whispered hoarsely, Emily, don't give it to him. Trust Daniel. Emily's heart ached, but she nodded, clutching her brother's words like a lifeline. Mark's smirk returned, but there was a flicker of unease in his eyes now. He waved his hand at his men. Fine. Let the boy go. The guards hesitated, unsure. Mark barked louder. I said let him go. Ethan was shoved forward, stumbling into Emily's arms. She hugged him tightly, sobbing into his hair. But Mark wasn't finished. His voice grew venomous. You think this is over? You've ruined everything. If I go down, I'll drag you both with me. He lunged toward Daniel. For a moment, chaos erupted. Mark grabbed for the envelope. Daniel blocked him, fists flying. The guards tried to intervene, but Daniel's fury was unstoppable. A final blow sent Mark crashing to the dock, blood at the corner of his mouth, his arrogance shattered. Daniel stood over him, breathing hard. His voice rang out like a verdict. This ends tonight, Mark. No more lies. No more threats. Hours later, the police swarmed the docks. Mark was dragged away in handcuffs, his empire collapsing as the evidence spread across every news outlet. Daniel's board of directors, once hungry for his downfall, now scrambled to distance themselves from Mark's scandal. For the first time in weeks, Daniel wasn't fighting to survive, he had already won. Emily stood beside him, Ethan safe at her side. The night air was cold, but her heart felt lighter than it had in years. She looked up at Daniel, her voice soft. You risked everything. For me. For us. Daniel's eyes softened as he cupped her face gently. I didn't risk anything, Emily. I chose you. And I'd choose you 1,000 times over. Her eyes filled with tears. This time, they weren't from fear, but from love. For the first time, Emily let herself believe in a future. Not just for herself, not just for Ethan, but for all of them. Weeks later, the hospital bills were paid in full. Her mother began her slow road to recovery. Ethan returned to school, finally free from the shadows that had haunted their lives. And Emily. She no longer cleaned floors at night, exhausted and invisible. Instead, she walked proudly beside Daniel, not because of his wealth or status, but because they had fought through fire and come out stronger. One evening, as the sun set over the city skyline, Daniel took her hand and whispered, We've been through hell, Emily. But I think this is just the beginning of something beautiful. Emily smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. As long as we're together, I don't care where we go.